The restaurant was buzzing that Friday evening, but to Claire Reynolds, it was more than just another dinner. She adjusted the simple cardigan on her shoulders, a sharp contrast to the tailored suits she usually wore in her corner office. Tonight, she wasn't the CEO of a billion-dollar restaurant chain. She was just another customer, an ordinary woman out for dinner. No one around her knew that the future of this very restaurant depended on how this night went. Claire had spent the last 3 weeks traveling incognito, eating at different branches of her company's chain. She wanted to know the truth, the unfiltered experience her customers lived every day, away from the scripted presentations her managers prepared. For tonight's test, she chose the flagship restaurant, the one closest to headquarters. If the service, food, and spirit here didn't match the values she built the company on, then something was deeply wrong. She scanned the room. Servers rushed back and forth, balancing trays. The host smiled too politely, the kind of forced smile Claire had seen too many times. The kitchen doors swung open every few seconds, spilling bursts of noise and steam into the dining area. Everything looked fine on the surface, but she had learned long ago that appearances were deceptive. When the waitress came, Claire ordered the steak. It wasn't just a craving, it was her test. The steak was their signature dish, the meal that had made the chain famous years ago. If they could get that right, it meant the standards were still alive. If not, it meant rot had crept in somewhere. Claire leaned back, pen and small notepad hidden in her purse. She would jot down details later. The waitress left, and Claire took a sip of water, trying to appear casual. But her thoughts churned with the weight of responsibility. Hundreds of employees, thousands of families, all depended on this chain. Tonight mattered more than anyone in the room could imagine. A shadow passed near her table. It wasn't the waitress. It was a janitor, an older man pushing a mop bucket. His uniform was faded, his back bent slightly with age. Claire noticed he moved quietly, deliberately, almost invisible to the people around him. She had seen enough corporate worlds to know, the most important truths often came from the invisible ones. As he passed her table, he hesitated, just for a second. Then, with a glance that seemed both nervous and urgent, he slid a folded piece of paper toward her plate. Claire blinked in surprise. Her first instinct was suspicion. A note? In the middle of dinner? She covered it with her napkin quickly, her heart thumping. No one seemed to notice. When he moved on, blending back into the background, she unfolded it under the table. The words were scrawled in shaky handwriting, "Please, don't just taste the food. Look behind the kitchen doors. People are hurting." Claire froze. The steak, the test, the corporate performance, all of it faded in an instant. Her throat tightened. She read the note again, slowly. People are hurting. It wasn't about the food. It wasn't about the service. It was about the human beings keeping this place alive. Her fork clinked against the plate when the waitress returned with the sizzling steak, but Claire hardly noticed. Her appetite was gone. Instead, she kept glancing at the janitor, who now moved to mop near the restrooms, head down. He never looked her way again. Claire's mind raced. Why risk slipping her a note? Did he know who she was? Impossible. She was careful with her disguise. Maybe he just sensed something, a desperation to be heard. The kind of desperation that only comes when you've run out of safe options. She cut into the steak mechanically. It was undercooked, poorly seasoned, disappointing for their supposed flagship. But none of that mattered now. She chewed slowly, eyes fixed on the kitchen doors. People were hurting. What did that mean? Overworked staff. Unsafe conditions. Something darker. Her CEO instincts kicked in. She had to see for herself. Excusing herself, she walked toward the restroom but instead lingered by the kitchen door. When a busboy pushed it open with a tray of dirty dishes, she slipped inside. The air hit her like a wall, grease, heat, and chaos. The kitchen was far from the spotless showcase she expected. A young cook's hands were bandaged, yet he still chopped vegetables with a wince of pain. A dishwasher, drenched in sweat, coughed heavily as he stacked plates. The head chef barked orders, his tone more cruel than commanding. Claire noticed a clock on the wall, broken, its hands stuck at 3:15. Time, it seemed, didn't matter here. Her heart clenched. She remembered when she first started the company, her dream had been to create not just meals, but opportunities. Dignity for people who worked hard. Yet here, in her flagship location, workers looked more like ghosts than proud employees. Then she saw him again, the janitor, wringing out his mop near a back door. Their eyes met briefly, and this time, his gaze held hers. No words, just a silent question, "Do you see now?" Claire had to force herself to leave, afraid her cover would be blown. She returned to her table, but the steak sat untouched. The note burned in her pocket like a secret she could no longer ignore. That night, she couldn't sleep. In her small rented apartment, she paced the floor. The images haunted her, the wounded hands, the exhausted dishwasher, the janitor's eyes. She had built this company on ideals, but somewhere along the line, something had gone terribly wrong. She couldn't just be a silent witness. The next morning, Claire arrived at the restaurant before opening hours. No disguise. This time, she wore her power suit, her CEO badge displayed clearly. The manager nearly fainted when he saw her. Staff whispered, shocked, some terrified. She didn't waste time. "Everyone, gather in the dining area," she said firmly. Her voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed, but there was warmth in her tone. Slowly, reluctantly, the cooks, servers, busboys, and janitor assembled. She looked around the room, meeting their eyes one by one. "Last night, I came here undercover. I wanted to test the food. But what I found went deeper than any plate. I saw pain. I saw exhaustion. I saw people hurting." A murmur spread through the room. Some lowered their eyes, others straightened, surprised that she noticed. Claire reached into her pocket and